Nice job, Charlie and Joe. Next up, we're going to have some presenters talk about understanding the real consumer journey, especially when it comes to social and mobile, to connect it to ROI from a different lens. They're at this really interesting startup called Facebook. I think they might do well. And when you think about it, there's a lot of conversation around not just understanding how to click on something, but what is truly going to be thumb-stopping action. So let's bring up our next speakers. Let's bring up Neha Bhargava, who is the manager of advertising research at Facebook, and Dan Chapsky, who is a data scientist on the Facebook team. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. So, as Stephen mentioned, my name is Neha Bhargava, and I'm part of the Facebook marketing science team. My colleague Dan and I would like to share some initial exploration we've been doing about how consumers are purchasing products online. We've talked a lot today about consumer behavior is changing. We know from our own experiences that we have more and more devices. We have computers, we have tablets, we have mobile phones. But why is that really important? We think that this initial exploration paints a really important picture about why we should think about both mobile and desktop when actually planning campaigns, as well as especially measuring effectiveness. We think that this highlights the importance of taking into account the mobile attribution points, regardless of how you measure it. So we often take a very simplistic approach to looking at consumers' journey. For a specific e-com advertiser, we may look at how many ad impressions were there on Facebook, and then what was the total number of conversions that occurred. And we may break it down into mobile and desktop, perhaps further into in-app versus mobile web. And then we can take this last click model or some simplified model. And this suggests how are people getting from that ad impression to the actual conversion. But we know from our own experiences, this isn't how it works. The last time I bought a camera, I didn't just look right away at my phone and then right away purchase it. It's not quite that simple. And even if you do take this simplified approach and you miss mobile, you miss more than half of the journeys that are occurring. So this isn't enough when we're figuring out how to create campaigns and how to decide how effective they are, since that's really what Gail was talking about this morning, about what's important. So Dan and I wanted to take more of a consumer-centric approach to this. So we take a single consumer, one single person, and we understand how is that one person interacting with one specific advertiser. We see that right away this person sees an ad on their mobile phone, and then they see this, for the same advertiser, they see an ad on a desktop. They then purchase the app on their phone and start playing around with it. They get really interested, and they even do a last conversion on their desktop. So these are the kinds of purchasing paths that we can see with our data set. It looks at Facebook ad impressions as well as actual conversions. And when we start taking into account other verticals, particularly e-com, multi-channel retailer, and travel, we can see that these journeys are really complicated. We picked out these three industries since they seem to really embrace the ad delivery across both devices, as well as tracking conversions across both these devices. We also noticed really quickly that these conversion paths can be really complicated. They can have lots of steps like these ones, or very, very simple. It could just be an ad impression and then a purchase. It varies a lot, but the things that we see a lot are this cross-device behavior, people switching back and forth between phones, devices, and computers. So I'm going to hand it off to Dan, who's going to take us farther into the actual data set, looking at how does it look when you aggregate across these advertisers.
Hey, everybody. Let's talk cross-device. So what we decided to do is we took all the people within the e-commerce vertical who were converting, and we wanted to figure out how we can aggregate it up. So the way we decided to do that is to simplify to where a journey starts and where a journey ends, and then just look at what cross-device behavior actually occurred. So here's that e-commerce example we were talking about. And you can see that about half of the impressions were on mobile and half of them were on desktop, and with about 60% of the final conversions happening on desktop. And there's a few things here that I think make a lot of intuitive sense to us. Within e-commerce, most of the conversions are happening on the same device that the initial impression is given on. E-commerce is an industry that has a quick turnaround time and short purchase cycles. But when there is a higher friction purchase that needs to happen, they're going to go from mobile to desktop and not from desktop to mobile because it's a little easier to buy things still on desktop, and that's what people are used to doing. But so to dig into this more, we decided to look across all of the verticals that Neha mentioned. And so we have that e-commerce vertical over on the left, and then we have a travel vertical in the middle and multi-channel retailers. So immediately, if you start comparing e-commerce to travel, some of the differences in how people interact with these verticals online becomes more apparent. For example, in travel, there's far more impressions that are being served on a mobile device, but then a higher amount of overall cross-device behavior. I think this also makes sense to all of us because you might research a certain trip, a certain purchase on your mobile device, but for that high friction, high cost purchase, you're going to do it on your desktop where you're more comfortable spending that much time and that much money. And if you look at all of these in general, you can just see that every vertical has a lot of cross-device behavior happening, just in different quantities. So if we look at that last vertical, multi-channel retailers, something looks a little strange, right? So this is specifically apparel stores that have brick and mortar presences as well as online presences. And you can see the vast majority of those impressions are being served on mobile, with then the vast majority of the final conversions happening on a desktop device. And for us, this actually didn't really make us think that they were doing something different in terms of marketing, but alluded to a difference in the core customer base. So what we decided to do is actually look at people in terms of what kind of journey they were taking. So we could break it down into 3 ways that people were converting. Going from mobile to mobile, desktop to desktop, or mobile to desktop, and just compare the demographics between those types of people. So first off, for desktop to desktop people, these tend to be older people who are more likely to be married, more professional, basically everybody in this room. These people are spending their whole day just staring at a computer screen, learning about products on a computer screen, and then buying stuff, on a computer screen. But then once we look at the other paths, a more interesting narrative starts to become apparent. So if we look at the people who first were impressed upon mobile and then ended up on desktop, these are more likely to be mobile-first females. So these are people who are more female. These are people who spend more time on their phone. And then that starts to make the apparel vertical we were looking at make more sense. These are people who are doing more on their phone and more comfortable converting across devices. So in the apparel vertical, it wasn't that they were somehow marketing differently, but just the people they wanted are converting in this new way. And then for the last group, the younger group, these are people who are converting on mobile and seeing impressions on mobile. That's because they grew up with mobile phones. They're comfortable living their life on mobile devices, and they're comfortable buying on mobile devices. So what does this all tell us? Well, there's still a lot of different areas that we want to explore, and we hope to in the coming months. But for us, this has really emphasized the importance of cross-device behavior for every vertical. Because in many cases, people who aren't measuring it just don't necessarily know where their conversions are coming from and which ads of theirs are working. This is especially true within mobile, because 61% of these journeys started on mobile, and almost 30% of the journeys ended on mobile. And more importantly even, your next set of customers, the people who are learning how to buy things online now, are going to be mobile first very soon. And if we don't keep up with them, we will not be keeping up with our customers. Also, for us, this really highlighted the need for there to be more multi-channel measurement solutions across the entire industry. We only have visibility into a few channels within sort of the Facebook sphere, but the entire industry overall needs to move towards these channels, or we're going to be left way behind what our customers are actually doing. It's time for us to stop targeting screens and start targeting journeys. Thank you.